You're listening to IHC's podcast. Today's topic is Culture is Medicine.
Welcome to the IHC podcast. My name is Marissa Hemstreet and I'm your host. I'm from the Canyoncito Band of Navajos and I'm the Communications Coordinator for the Indian Health Center of Santa Clara Valley, where we provide medical, dental, counseling, WIC, and prevention services for over 23,000 patients, while specializing in the unique health needs of American Indians and Alaska Natives. Today, we're here with Elisa Alvarado.
My name's Elisa Marina Alvarado, and I am resident here in San Jose, and I recognize that we are on Muwekma and Tamian and Mamutsun land. You know, those are the three tribes whose homeland kind of has been part of what is now known as Santa Clara County. I use the pronouns of she and her. I always say that if I got stuck on a desert island and the only other person was a woman, I'd say, well, go for it, you know. Let's go. So I just like say, let's just find love where we can. And my family's Purépecha and Chicana. I identify as Chicana because I was born here in the United States. And I'm also Cuban on my mother's side. But I was mostly raised with knowing the family that was Purépecha. And it's a people. We use the term pueblo, people, of the state of Michoacan in Mexico. And the language is more similar to Zuni than like the Aztec Nahua. And so the oral history is that we came down, you know, from the Four Corners area.
So I understand that you're a part of Red Earth Women's Society. Can you tell us a little bit about that organization?
Yeah, very, very special to me. It actually was originally a project that Kelly Gamboa developed when she was working for TANF. It was like a kind of a parenting support. It was called Motherhood is Sacred. It was a group, support group for women. And it kind of evolved. It had a set curriculum and evolved to become Women Are Sacred, so that it could include women who are also not necessarily mothers. And then she lost her beloved husband, and she kind of put aside a lot of her community work for a while. She was grieving very deeply, and in 2000, I think it was 2002, I ran into her in Albuquerque at a Women Are Sacred conference. It's a conference that's put on every 2 years by the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. And check out their website. It's really, really got a lot of great information on what's going on with Indigenous women across the United States. And so we were just fired up by what we were hearing, you know, at the conference, the work that was going on, what we were learning about the loss of Indigenous lives and tribal and urban community responses. And so we talked about reviving the group that she was doing, but since she was no longer with TANF, we talked about just kind of reviving it as a grassroots women's circle. And both of us had the experience of being in nonprofits where it's kind of service-oriented in terms of what you can do. It's very defined. And we wanted to be more grassroots where it was not so much service, but advocacy, organizing, and also mutual support. Mm-hmm. The two of us kind of just started shaking the bushes, and she had still contact with a lot of the women who had participated previously in the Women Are Sacred circle, and so we kind of got going and basically asked the group if we could have that focus on missing and murdered Indigenous women, as well as mutual support. So that got going, and then we did that first MMIW event at the county, in the county building, and it turned out super well, and we've been kind of going ever since. So it's very grassroots. So we kind of go dormant for a little while, and we kind of stretch out, and then we come back together, but there's very strong relationships. But it's open. It's open to women who identify as Indigenous and want to do something for the community and for each other.
Awesome. How long have you been a part of RUSE?
So that probably since 2002.
Mm-hmm.
I was it 2002? No, it wasn't that far back. I'm so bad with dates. I'm 70, so I have a lot of, like they say, it's not memory problems. We just have more filing cabinets to go through to figure out. I think not 2012. Okay, so I think it was around 2016, actually. Yeah, I had gone to one or two of the Women Are Sacred meetings at TANF. I think I led a workshop for one of them. So yeah, so I've been a member, let's say, for 8 years.
Nice. That's good. What is it like to be a part of RUSE?
Well, it's very special for me. When I got involved, I've always, since way back, the 70s, I've been called, quote, politically. I just see it as like community responsibility involved in, and I, at the time, I was coming out of, I had been for like 34 years the artistic director of Teatro Visión, a theater company, where I helped write, directed the company, all the production work, directed many of the plays myself, and so I and for chunks of time I also worked. Like I worked here at the Indian Health Center. I worked at Kaiser. I'm an LCSW, so and so that was like a big transition for me. And I've always been involved in the community, even when I was in high school, and so I just felt like I found another home, because with Teatro Visión, is very much, it becomes a way of life. It's when you're rehearsing 6 days a week, you're just kind of around people a lot, certain people, and so it was kind of strange not having that rhythm to my life. And I even, like back in the 70s, I did a lot of work around the forced sterilizations that were going on with Indigenous women. I had been a supporter of the American Indian movement, and so I was just drawn to work particularly with women. I think in that it just kind of became a good home. And being in LCSW, I liked creating a space where women felt supported in their own healing, and as well as doing something to change the conditions, the social conditions that contribute, the oppression, the colonialism, that contribute to the experience of MMIW. So we're using the term now also, missing and murdered Indigenous people, or I often use missing and murdered Indigenous women and people, and relatives, because I like to keep that women-centered. I think we it's important to keep that focus of women.
Okay. So before we get started with the rest of the questioning, I just want to provide a trigger warning. Before we begin this portion of the program today, we do want to provide a trigger warning that some of the details discussed may be emotionally difficult or disturbing for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. If you are seeking help, please refer to the following resources for aid in the description of this program. Thank you so much for listening. Okay, So today we're here to just explore the topic of murdered and missing Indigenous women and peoples, relatives, all the other acronyms.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about what the MMIP movement is?
It really has strong origins in Canada, actually, and then as like the awareness of there was, I don't know the numbers right now, but it was found that like hundreds of Native women had gone missing in Canada, off of different reserves, and so down here, women on tribal communities were saying, "Oh yeah, that's going on here too," and so there began to be this awareness and this growing concern, and it was really led by women who, like in the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, provides technical support, helps find funding for organizations that do work to prevent domestic violence in tribal communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were hearing this all over the country, projects that they were involved with.
Mm-hmm.
And so they began, connecting the dots. They had been working very hard to get VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act. It's a federal legislation, and really trying to update it to address issues that were creating risk factors for Native women. Issues like the jurisdiction, of tribal police and non-tribal, and where crimes are committed, and not being able to prosecute non-tribal members that commit crimes on tribal lands, and conditions too within Indian country of substance abuse, or families kind of being fractured, and that can make like young women vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so the movement just began to really pick up steam, and so the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center found that there hadn't been really any data collected since, like, I don't know, it's been back 2010 or something, and back then it was a study through the Urban Indian Health Institute, and back then that was like over 5,000, and easily we could say 6,000, because there's often an undercount, and so, and of course, we know that the phenomena of Indian women being targeted, being trafficked, has gone on since the arrival of Europeans, so that we became commodity, chattel, and that long existing condition was then further enabled by the issues of jurisdiction and poverty, access to help. So that's the movement has been largely women's organizations on tribal lands, and trying to do things to like support families that have somebody that's gone missing, and then that's the local level, and then the other is to advocate for changes in the structuring of law enforcement in tribal lands, and the relationship of like the FBI and the role that they have. So it's like these different levels of work. The director here at the Indian Health Center, Sonia Tatnowski, has been a very important leader in this work. And fortunately, with the Biden administration and his bringing in Deb Haaland as head of the Department of Interior, and she really got active, around seeing what the federal government can do to make the world safer for Indian women.
Mm-hmm.
So that the Not Invisible Commission hearings that took place around the country this past summer, recommendations were developed out of those, and we're hoping to see those implemented, especially here in the state. Like even here, locally, there's a lot of work to be done. We're just, for example, we've been in some of the meetings where we talk about how we're not even correctly identified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
And that was a piece of it that when I learned about MMIP, since I've been with the agency for a few years, that's a topic that has come up again and again. And it's like, oh, we're still educating people about this. But like in our community MMIP meetings that we've been having recently, we're talking about how in the Native community we're ready for action, not so much informing the general public of what's going on, because in our community it's been going on for so long, and if you are a part of that community, you know a little bit about the issue. And in our meetings that we've had recently, that wasn't something that I thought of. I was like, oh yes, okay, so women are going missing, they're getting murdered, they're getting trafficked. But I didn't think of the other part of that is that they're also they are getting murdered and they're being misidentified, or they just go on looks. So if a person quote unquote looks Caucasian, they're just written off as white, but they could still have Indian blood in them, and be a part of that tribe. Or they can our Native folks look like a whole bunch of different races because we were forced to assimilate. And just through colonization, and now, love is love and you love whoever, no matter the race. And so, like, for me, if I was to go missing tomorrow, somebody would look at my face and just say, oh, this is a little Mexican girl. And I'm all, well, you're half right, but
Yeah.
I'm still Navajo. And it was just a little heartbreaking to hear that, we're being misidentified and folks aren't putting in the extra effort to actually figure out who we are, what we are, where we're from.
One of the issues that we want to do more work around is also the local police and their understanding and use of the feather alert, which is like the Amber Alert, so that if a family has somebody that goes missing and they report it to the feather alert, it doesn't just stop with the local police, because that report goes to the local police to decide whether it would go on to being reported across the state through that network. And there's up in Klamath area, there was a family that reported a daughter that had gone missing, and the report went to the local police, and they said, no, this isn't, she's probably out partying, or and so they just sat on it. And that every moment after a person goes missing is critical. And so that's something that we really want to do some work around, is making that feather alert really a tool to help mobilize a response, a search for a person that goes missing, an Indian person. And also the police response. There's a woman that's from San Jose here, an Indigenous woman that got a job up in Portland and went to apply for a job. She had a job during the day, but she wanted something for the weekends. And so she went to apply for a job at this little club. They have like a lot of apartments, like, music scene and all that. And they told her to come back at 2 a.m. when they closed. So she did, and then she was never seen again. And the family, until they found her body in the river, unfortunately. And the family, right away, her cousin, contacted the police. The family went up there, and the police just sat around for days. I mean, they just assumed that she maybe had run away, or they're like, no, she was like almost 30, and they're like, no, she just got a job that she loves. And anyway, so that, police response is also something that is an important goal, to change that. Also, like the support for families. A lot of times it's on the families. The families are trying to organize a search, and they're calling and calling and calling whoever, please help, please help.
Mm-hmm.
And the police just treat the families often like a bother pest.
What else do you feel like is a part of like our response to the MMIP movement?
Well, one part too, and it's something we'd like to do more work around, is reaching young women. The trafficking of young women of color is just, it's growing and growing. It's really an epidemic. There's now an organization of Black women, because like in Oakland, across the country, young Black women, high school age girls are going missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in fact, I went to a conference once, and there was a woman who's on the tribal council of the Navajo Nation, and she was seeing how online there's a lot of predatory kind of cultivating a relationship with a young girl, teen girl, and they basically cultivate till they set up a meeting, and then they nab them, they kidnap them, and they end up trafficking. I heard several women give testimony at I went to two of the hearings this past summer. I went to the one up in Klamath and the one in Albuquerque, and talking about meeting somebody in high school and seeing nice, and then basically kidnapped them.
Mm-hmm.
And trafficked them. So would like to see us do more education with young women, or just getting that conversation going of like, what might make you vulnerable to something like that?
Mm-hmm.
How to be safe when you're online, how to recognize predatory behavior online. It's really a huge sector of the population of Indigenous women that go missing are, in their teens and 20s.
Yeah. At last year's MMIP conference at San Jose State University, that was one of the things I got to learn a little bit more about, like what are the circumstances that these women go missing in. And for me, my understanding was that not only is it happening in cities, but in my head, it happened predominantly on reservations. Mm. Well, that is a part of it. I did learn, like, the statistics are that Indigenous women go missing more often in urban settings than they do on the reservation. Yeah. And this played out in my head because I go visit the reservation. I go to Hajle, New Mexico. Mm. My family lives there now. My dad grew up there, and he moved on back. He's with his siblings. And when I go on a run or like a walk there, I try to always get like one of my family members to come with me. Mm-hmm. But they call me city legs. And they're like, we don't want to walk with you. So I'll go by myself for like a 2-3 mile walk or run. And I was telling my dad that, I don't feel comfortable. I'm doing a lot of work with MMIP stuff back in San Jose. Mm-hmm. And like just knowing of this issue, I don't feel safe going out by myself. On a walk, I feel capable, and sure, I can put up a fight. I'm going to go down swinging if you're going to try it. Yeah. But my dad was like, no, here. And so he gave me like a little pocket knife to take with me and pepper spray. He's like, worst case scenario, there's going to be like a coyote. Yeah. And he was like, but he's like, just don't go near it. I'm like, okay. So like that gave me some peace of mind, but that shouldn't be a norm.
Yeah.
And now having the statistic of learning that it happens more often in cities, I'm just as paranoid going out here. For me, it's more so like when I go to the gym or come back, because I go early in the morning, and because of the time change, it's been darker. Yeah. So when I park in the parking lot, I make sure to try to park underneath the light or park close to the entrance of the gym. And then when I come out, I make sure nobody's looking at me, nobody's near my car door. I try not to park next to like white vans, things like that. And this is so normal for me because I'm a little bit more aware of my surroundings. But there's other people who, they're just living life like we should be able to do without fear. Right. And that's when these things happen. And even like you were saying with like the online predatory stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, especially, those rural areas where it's not easy to get to hang out with other kids and stuff, so. But yeah, it's awful to live with that fear, that just, it's always in the background. And it's true, we should not have to fear that. We shouldn't have to fear even, having somebody call us a name or, look at us in a certain way. So that, the racism that I think is underlying a lot of the acts of violence against Indigenous women, that has to change. I got into, I'd always carried, I've always carried a sadness because my own grandmother she was well into her 70s, and she was a tiny Purépecha woman, with hair down to her knees, and somebody broke into her house and raped her, and she was an elder, and they never found. I asked my uncle, did they ever arrest the person? And no, they never even came to see how she was afterwards. Nobody. And she. Something just happened to her. She had diabetes, and I think that shock, that trauma, did something that made her, really sick. And so it's just something that I just, and this is a very personal thing. My family wanted me to. I'm the oldest of 6, and they wanted me to go live with her to help take care of her, and I just. I know, my friends and all this, my school, and so the idea was maybe after I graduated from high school, and so then I always felt wow, if I would have been there. And it's interesting because I gave this testimony. I was preparing this to give this testimony at the Not Invisible Commission, and it was actually one of our Red Earth Women's Society members, Sharon, that said, well, they could have gotten you. And it's, I don't know, just as a child, I didn't think of that. I just thought I should be there to protect her, or I should have, But they never found the person. And just the way my uncle described it, the police treated the family was, not good. And so that's kind of just been more my personal drive, to be involved in this movement. And I'm very proud of, the local response. I mean, it's wonderful that the group, of women at the students, your organization at San Jose State, Native Student Organization, now we have a good ongoing relationship, and with the Success Center, the Native American Indigenous Student Success Center at San Jose State, Indian Health Center, the past couple of years has really stepped up and provided a lot of support, and you've just been involved in it and making it possible for Sonia to do the kind of work that she's doing. That that feeling of safety, it does improve our health. When we're in constant fear, our body is constantly, running that cortisol, that's a state of stress that is so, related to all kinds of disease. So it's being involved in this movement is definitely an important area of prevention, and an important way to improve the health, physical and mental, of Indigenous families.
Yeah. Well, true words have never been spoken. And I'm happy that, IHC has been a part of a community-wide response and action with collaborators, like you were mentioning, with NASIG, Native American Indigenous Student Success Center, and NASO, Native American Student Organization at San Jose State, and along with RUSE and other community partners from the South Bay and beyond. So it's been a pleasure to be a part of that work, and so many different capacities. I wear a bunch of different little hats.
Yeah.
But I think that's a lot of us in the Indigenous community. We have we have folks who work at IHC who are a part of Ruse.
Yeah.
And, other folks who work at other locations in different capacities, but we all try to work together as a collective.
Yeah. I'm very excited about our upcoming May. You know, May is the national, actually, awareness month regarding missing and murdered Indigenous women and families and people, relatives. And there will be activities happening around the United States. And I'm really proud that we've been, doing something here in San Jose now. This will be going on our 3rd or 4th year. And not just, the red dress, putting them up, but like, as you mentioned, we're really now looking at what needs to get done locally to improve the quality of life of Indigenous women and their families, to make the community a safer place. There's a young woman who was trafficked. She lived in Gilroy, and so that's fortunately she was found, freed, but she still had a lot of struggle to find help to deal with the trauma and to kind of reintegrate into her family and her previous life. So what exists also to support people that are healing, from having been trafficked or having been assaulted. So that's definitely something that has to be looked at, and it needs to be based, that help needs to be based in culture, an understanding of our culture, of our ways, and it's so, we use, services, mental health services, we use medical services, but we also use spiritual and cultural resources, and just having that, knowing that there's a circle that's just a confidential place to be with other women that have experienced something similar. It is, it's our way. It's that we have a healing component that's a part of everything we do, whether it's in our food and our songs and dance, our agriculture, there's that making of peace, making of beauty, making of feeding the spirit through whatever we do.
That's kind of similar to like IHC. One of our we have the main podcast, IHC podcast, but then we also do a separate part that's called Culture is Medicine, and it's how does your culture tie into your well-being? What does Culture is Medicine mean to you? And that's typically what we ask folks. Would you mind commenting on that? What does Culture is Medicine mean to you, especially from this healing perspective in regards to the MMIP movement?
I can get really technical about it, because I am a mental health, professional. But there's more. Even the National Health Institute has done research around how our beliefs affect our physical health. So if you have an illness and you believe you're going to heal, it really does have an effect. It lands to what we call positive prognosis, and the connection between the kinds of thoughts that we have and what goes on in our body. Like that's like video games, for example. People feel that spike of
adrenaline.
Yeah. It does. There's very much a connection between the mind and the body, and so our elders, our ancestors, are super wise. They taught us these practices that help us both, in terms of our thoughts, how we're thinking about something, and then it helps our body regulate, calm down. And there's times, where we have to fight, we have to struggle, but we can do that in a way that does not provoke being in a state of terror, being in a state of, that physical state that is so damaging to the body. in our culture, it's what we believe. It's the wisdom of, of generations and generations and generations, that collected wisdom that gets passed on about how to eat well, how to build a home, how to cultivate, the land, and how to take care of each other, how to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's often it's passed down, through an oral tradition, but it is tried and true wisdom that works. And if we can, unfortunately, because of colonialism, a lot of times we get we lose that, or we get divided from it. We drift away from it, and so it takes a conscious effort to connect. Now it's not like, oh, there's somebody that's going to teach us these things. We have to make that effort to go after that knowledge so that we can survive. So I in the spirit, we understand. We have an understanding of spirit, that connection between our energy and that knowing, that believing that we have a reason to be in this life.
Mm-hmm.
There's it's like that higher knowing, and that our culture has so many ways to say, okay, let's take a little time and reconnect with your spirit, because that's what's going to guide you towards what it is that you're supposed to be doing in your life, this precious life that was given to you. And the spirit and our energy are very, very much connected. It's like this, when the spirit gets it's like a fire kind of dying out. The embers are low, and so it doesn't give us much warmth. So we have to do things to kind of stoke it up and get it to do its job in a way. And so that's what one thing that's so beautiful about our cultures, that we have ceremonies, we have ways, even kinds of foods, kind of plants, that feed our spirit.
Mm-hmm.
When our spirit's strong, we have right away a sense that we're in danger, or that we're someplace we shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the eyes in the back of your head. It's like, so keeping your spirit strong helps us to not get into situations, or not be around people that could be dangerous for us. It's really, that they call it intuition, or but that ability to know what is a good space and not a good space for us to be in.
Yeah, and that's one thing I admire, especially in my friends, family, my partner, knowing that they have really good senses of intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I found most often with folks who've been through trauma, or any kind of traumatic event, that sometimes our intuition can be a little off kilter.
Mm-hmm.
To make sense of what either happened to us, or to be like, oh, well, something, I probably just didn't sense that about that person.
Yeah.
But I look to my friends, my family, my partner for a little guidance on that. Sometimes I feel like I don't really have that little intuition, and I just try to be nice to everybody, and they're like, oh, that person's a little sketch.
Yeah.
So I do admire that in others, and like you were saying, working on yourself, healing yourself, is what makes that stronger. And I feel like throughout the years, it's gotten better.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's the thoughts they have a good function, but they're not always reliable in terms of making good decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difference between European or Western. They call Western. I've always thought that's interesting, because we're Western. But they rely a lot on thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And the heart, they don't understand the importance of the heart, and the connection of the heart and the mind.
Mm-hmm.
That now they know that the heart actually has neurons, it's like another little brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's but it's a different kind of like knowing rather than words that
Mm-hmm.
that it puts forward. And so it's really but we knew that that knowing is super important, that the Spirit speaks to us
Mm-hmm.
through our heart.
I like. I don't know. I have ADD as well, and so when you're saying it's like it has its own neurons in the heart. I imagined a heart, like the actual like cartoon version of a heart with a tiny brain.
Yeah, it is.
That's wonderful to think of, and just knowing that our brain, our body is all connected, and if something just doesn't feel right, if you don't feel safe, listen to that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Maybe you'll be wrong and you're perfectly fine. But what about the latter? If you're not in a good situation, try to seek help, get out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just good to be cautious because again, so many of us have gotten murdered, missing, or trafficked.
One of the danger areas is foster care.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that we also want to look more into. That there are a lot of runaways from foster homes because of the treatment of BIPOC kids in these foster homes. The over-representation
Mm-hmm.
of BIPOC kids in the foster care system,
Mm-hmm.
and that so a lot of kids run away, and they end up being trafficked.
Mm-hmm. And then for the listeners, BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color.
Mm-hmm.
What can people do to get involved and take action for MMIP?
Well, we'll definitely encourage those who are interested to come to our two events. The May 8th teach-in at San Jose State in the new Native American Indigenous Student Center. That's what it used to be, the chapel. Yeah. And then on May 24th, it's a Friday, I believe, is going to be a town a roundtable.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, we're really hoping to see a lot of elected representatives there to really get down to talking about what can be done, like in the justice system or the
Mm-hmm.
city, the county, even education.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the nonprofit service, programs and things like that. So, those. I'm not sure. That's going to be in the Rotunda, right? In
Mm-hmm.
City Hall.
They were thinking of hosting it there, but the Rotunda is not available.
Oh.
But it will be somewhere.
Okay.
And then for folks to keep up on information about MMIP events happening, and there'll be an MMIP event at West Valley College at the end of April. There'll be some with San Jose State University. And then throughout the Bay Area. And to learn more information about that, you can go ahead and give us a visit by checking out our bit.ly link, which is bit.ly/IHC_MMIP. And then the link will be clickable just above us here. And for our roundtable, we are also looking for testimony. If you yourself have been affected by MMIP or a family member or a friend, you feel free to reach out to us. And if you'd like to share your story, we will be presenting those to folks at the roundtable discussion. You are welcome to testify if you'd like to about your story, or you can write in and share it with us, and we can share it through your by proxy. Our goal is to not re-victimize folks. Our goal is to just get those stories out, to make folks aware of what is going on in our community.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because we are going missing, we are going murdered, we are getting trafficked. And these things have happened for too long, and they need to stop. One way for folks to want to take action, especially folks in government, is by learning about this issue. And so far, it's been kind of brushed to the side because they're like, oh, it's not on the mainstream media news because we don't have a stereotypical colonial facial structure. We're not, well, for lack of better terms, we're not white. So, our stories aren't being readily shared as they should be. So if you folks have your story and you'd like to share it, feel free to reach out to us. You can send myself an email, and I'll share my email below. It's mhemstreet@ihcscv.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else did you want to say?
No. When you were talking about getting involved, I was just thinking about how a lot of electeds think, oh, Native Americans are only, 1.3, 1.5, percent of the Santa Clara County population. And so, but if one of the things that therapists of color have long advocated for, in other healthcare, is look at our population in terms of equity. So we may be numerically small, but the number of us that have diabetes, the number of the percentage of our population that are incarcerated, the percentage that are homeless, the percentage that, is like way higher than like white or other, ethnicities. Oh, the races and ethnicities. So the actual need is really, huge. And it's just right, that the original people of this land, this quote, so-called country, not be continued, that there not be a continued violence directed.
Thank you for listening to us here at the Indian Health Center, where everyone is welcome. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you like our content, check out our Instagram, our Facebook, our YouTube. Our social media handle is @IHC San Jose. Bye.